Once again, it seems I have called it. An elite-style Adepta Sororitas Detachment in 10th edition. I'm glad I don't have to change the script I had partly written in preparation of me being correct. Do you know, midday is too early to be releasing new things. How many vampires do you think are awake at that time? But this is the Celestian detachment, without the Celestians with guns. It was right there! This was the moment, this was the opportunity. Bring back Celestians with guns! We have the models! But this is why Battle Sister Squads and Sacresants and Paragons get the bonus. Battle Sister Squads are the unit you use to represent Celestians with guns. Says so in their rules. So, no Celestians with guns, this is obviously a 0 out of 10 detachment. I thought maybe the delay between the article going live and the downloadable PDF being available was the decision to release or not release a Celestian unit card today. Or they should update their operating system, which seems to be called Celestian Sacresants. That is meant to say OC, Objective Control. In this detachment, Celestian Sacresants, as long as they're not battle-shocked, have OC2. One more than normal. It doesn't solve their problem of being very fragile. 1 wound and a 3+ save is like a Battle Sister, and the detachment also supports the Battle Sisters. So maybe let's just have Battle Sisters who start the game with OC2 anyway. I love support for my basic Battle Sisters. And we have a Celestian and Paragon Warsuit detachment. I am going to come to my senses? These abilities require discarding miracle dice. What do we now have fewer of? Half the number per battle round, as it's only 1 at the start of the battle round, not 1 per player turn, and you only get 1 per phase that one of our units die in, not once per unit that dies. Not a good entry for Detachment December. And this is partly due to the balance patch in December hitting Adepta Sororitas so hard. I think this detachment was written without the knowledge of the balance patch changes. Games Workshop has more rules writers now, and they will not all know what the other group is doing. But there is more here than at first glance of, needs miracle dice as fuel, bad detachment. The detachment rule lets you make up to 3 of your units righteous. Then they get +1 to move and +1 leadership. The 1 extra leadership is okay. We are generally leadership 7, so an extra leadership point is appreciated. +1 to move isn't a lot, but if you think of it as 1 inch closer to a successful charge, it sounds better. You could stack this with the Triumph of St. Catherine, who gives you +2 to movement, and then you have 11-inch moving Paragon Warsuits or Penitent Engines. Any unit can have this part of the detachment rule. For a miracle dice. And making a unit righteous also makes them eligible for better aspects of stratagems. The detachment rule to have bonuses to hit, well, to improve the weapon skill and ballistic skill of units, is just certain units, and it is just the models with those keywords, so it won't affect any characters in the unit. Battle Sisters, Celestian Sacresants, and Paragon Warsuits all increase their weapon skill and ballistic skill by 1. That is only if you make them righteous. And when there's up to 3 units you can do it with, assuming you have 3 miracle dice, let's be honest, it's Paragon Warsuits, and maybe a unit that isn't Paragon Warsuits if you have enough miracle dice. The Paragon Warsuits already get +1 to hit against monsters and vehicles, so this will stack with an upgrade to their ballistic skill. It's not 2 sets of you are +1 to hit. So with the change to the ballistic skill and weapon skill, you are hitting on a 2 and have +1 to hit, which can counter any -1s to hit out there, and then you will still be hitting on a 2+. For Battle Sisters and Sacresants, it can be useful, but consider also the Hallowed Martyrs, where you get that bonus if you lose at least 1 model, and you don't need to spend miracle dice on that unit. Hallowed Martyrs as a comparison will come up, but this detachment looks to have all the weaknesses of the Army of Faith with none of the solutions. The Army of Faith wants you to use lots of miracle dice, but it also gives you more miracle dice. The Champions of Faith only takes. Every detachment comes with 4 enhancements. These enhancements will never be able to affect Paragon Warsuits. It would have to be on a character in a unit, and the only character that can join is the epic hero Morven Val. No enhancements are allowed on epic heroes. Mark of Devotion is 30 points, and that is steep for +1 attack. In the Hallowed Martyrs, there is Through Suffering Strength, which is the index version of St. Eleanor's Blade. You get +1 attack, +1 strength, and +1 damage. And it is +2 attacks, +2 strength, +2 damage if the bearer has lost any wounds. Market Devotion is 1 attack for 5 points more, or you can be +2 attacks and +1 damage if you are righteous. Admittedly, that is easier to get than losing wounds, but it doesn't seem fair. The Palatine is the character that wants this, because if there are more attacks, that means more mortal wounds through rapturous blows. You can get that for another miracle dice. The Triptych of Judgment lets you ignore any modifiers to your hit roll or, ballistic skill or weapon skill. If you know you were going against Death Guard, or have an army of massed stealth like Kroot, then it's an option, but also consider the Army of Faith. Light of the Emperor is 1 command point, and from Seraphim can be used as an aura, and then more of your army can be ignoring those penalties. Eyes of the Oracle sounds like heresy. Having torn out the eyes from a heretical witch, you keep them, and it does stuff allegedly because they're being tortured by holy imprisonment. I mean, they're also probably dead, so never mind. It's a good cheap enhancement at 10 points. It gives you precision attacks, sure, okay, but you also gain 1 command point each time the bearer's unit destroys an enemy character model. It doesn't have to be the character with the enhancement that makes the final attack, it doesn't have to be with precision, just your unit does it. If you shoot an enemy character to death while your character with this enhancement is leading a Battle Sister squad, you have an extra command point. If the Hospitaller watches her Sacresants wipe out a unit in combat, that is an extra command point. Only 1 extra command point per battle round is allowed. Sanctified Amulet is 25 points and prevents deep strike within 12 inches. It's good for protection of the home objective. I would put it on a lone Dialogus, or maybe a lone Dialogus with half a squad of Battle Sisters that had been split by an Immolator. That will be cheaper than an Allied Navigator. That is the character you would use if you want this, but in the other detachments. This is a very combat-focused detachment. I suppose you could think of it as Bloody Rose. A lot of people wanted a Bloody Rose detachment. I suppose this fits the bill. 5 out of 6 of the stratagems are about combat, and getting to combat, and doing better things in combat. They also come with heavy restrictions around being righteous. Shield of Denial is a 6+ feel no pain against mortal wounds, or a 5+ feel no pain if you are righteous. This is worse than the Army of Faith's Shield of Faith, where any unit can use the Shield of Faith for a 5+ feel no pain against mortal wounds, and the Seraphim can give it as an aura, which is very useful against areas of mortal wounds like Morlocks popping up from underground. 6+ feel no pain alone is like an obvious trap. If you are going to be hit by 6 mortal wounds, you are spending a command point to potentially save an average of 1 wound. Don't do that. You would only use it on a righteous unit. Suffer Not the Unfaithful cannot be used unless you are righteous. It gives you lethal hits or sustained hits in the fight phase or the shooting phase. It's a shame it's only if you are righteous and you remembered to make that unit righteous in the command phase. I think you should get 1 anyway, just for 1 command point you get sustained hits. But if you are righteous, then you get both. Think of the Zephyrim and their ability, very similar. You would be spending a miracle dice to get both abilities. I love Celestians with guns, I mean Battle Sisters with bolt guns, getting sustained hits. But why do I have to spend miracle dice to have permission to use this stratagem? Sacresants will like it because then they can have both aspects. Because if you have the lethal hit molds, now you also have sustained hits. I like the halberds with sustained hits and a palatine in the unit giving them lethal hits anyway, so I wouldn't need to use this stratagem on them. But Repentia, you can make them righteous, they would like that +1 to move. They already have sustained hits, and now they also get lethal hits. You get the best of both, and you get to reroll the hit rolls if you have a Repentia Superior. You will fish for as many 6s as possible. Repentia are doing alright here. But it's a very good choice for Paragon Warsuits and Morven Val. You will make them righteous almost as often as you can. And with sustained hits, and the ability to have full rerolls, to fish for 6s again, to get as many 6s as possible, that's a lot of shots. Assuming you're with like multi-melters or heavy bolters. This would of course be pointless if you have heavy flamers. To the Heart of Heresy is a combat stratagem. In melee you get +1 strength, but also if you're righteous, you get an extra point of armor penetration. So consider Battle Sisters. In this detachment, with being righteous, and using the stratagem, weapon skill 3+, strength 4, and AP -1 tiny knives. That's not awful, it feels very Bloody Rose. Celestian Sacresants with mauls are strength 4, now they can be strength 5. That is a big boost as toughness 4 is very common. it is essentially like getting +1 to wound. And against orcs and Votan and other creepy creatures, they are toughness 5, now you get to wound them on a 4+. The Celestian Sacresants have a stratagem that only they can use, a defensive stratagem in the fight phase. The enemies would be at -1 to hit, and if you are righteous, you can select one other Celestian Sacresant unit from your army that is not battle shocked and is within 6 inches of your unit, and then they are also -1 to hit. That second part seems hard to pull off unless you have 2 Sacresant units charging against the same thing. You could have a Rhino with 2 units of 5 Celestian Sacresants inside, but I think it's a stretch. 10 Celestian Sacresants would be better. Then you still get 10 models who are at -1 to hit without having to be 2 squads that are near each other. Staying alive is one of their biggest problems. I think this delays it a little bit, but not enough. If it's against a horde unit with plenty of attacks and they are hitting on something like a 4+, pushing them to 5+ is going to be much better. Or even better and available to every unit in the army is Blinding Radiance in the Army of Faith, which you can also have an aura if you use it on any jump pack unit. Adepta Sororitas units can't withstand punishment, so I don't bother usually. I just do as much damage as possible, but just kill the enemy is not really an option anymore. So we'll get into combat. With Path of the Righteous, you can pile in or consolidate 6 inches instead of 3, so you can get more of your models into combat. And if you are righteous when doing so, you don't need to end your move closer to the nearest enemy model, just closer to the nearest enemy unit. This means that after you fought your opponent, and you're probably in like 2 ranks, you could wrap around the enemy to make them take desperate escape tests if they want to leave combat in their coming turn. We can fall back and still do things, and I like that. Fall back and shoot is all that the non-penitent units get in the penitent host, so it's good to see it elsewhere. I like to fall back and shoot. Battle Sisters will appreciate it, Dominions will appreciate it, any unit that uses guns, which is quite a lot of the Adepta Sororitas units. If you are righteous, you can also charge. Again, I'm thinking of Repentia, but that assumes that they survived whatever enemy was still there to fight back. It's important that the Repentia get to fight first. Charging lets you fight first. In the index, the Paragon Warsuits had this as their unit ability, so it's nice to see it back. Paragons have a lot of guns. They can shoot while in combat with big guns never tire because they're vehicles, and yes, the +1 weapon skill, ballistic skill, will also counter that -1 to hit, so they'd be back on their normal ballistic skill of 3+. But falling back and charging an enemy vehicle instead of being tied up with infantry is the bonus. We need those enemy vehicles dead, and the Paragon Warsuits are the ones to do it. I like this stratagem. Without some actual playtesting, I'm struggling to figure out an army list that would work. But there are many units you'll want to take. As with most detachments, Val and Paragon Warsuits are a great combination. They're already powerful, but they get even better in this detachment. Despite it seeming a bad detachment, tactics and strategies are at play here. You can now take more than 1 Paragon Warsuit unit, and they will be good. Having only 1 unit with more 1 Val was about the only way to do it. After that, they're not quite worth the points. And you would look to Exorcists and Castigators as your anti-tank options. If you like Paragon Warsuits and you have 9 Paragon Warsuits, this is a good day for you. We need their miracle dice. Unlike the Army of Faith, you don't get them from using stratagems. Unlike the Hallowed Martyrs, you don't get them from enhancements. So you need to rely on the Sisters of Battle with simulacrums generating miracle dice. And those Sisters of Battle could potentially be hitting on a 2+. I have a video about the weapons you want to pick for Adepta Sororitas, but with the Adept Roll app, you can figure out what weapons will be best against your opponents. You can import the Battle Sisters stats from Battlescribe, easy to do without any need for the Games Workshop app. You get rid of any weapons you're not using, and then you can figure out how many traitor guards you can kill or equivalent profile. This is a good way to figure out which weapon is best for your superior. Know what your most common enemy is and calculate if a hand flamer or a condemner bolt gun, which are my 2 favorites, would be better for you. The Adept Roll Mathahmmer app will help you figure that out. It's free to use, and the link to download it is in the description. Of course, in this detachment you will think about Celestian Sacresants. Where else are you going to use them? Yeah, probably Hallowed Martyrs. But they want a character so that their unit ability will trigger for -1 to wound. A Smash Palatine is a good choice. Get that Mark of Devotion, keep making this unit righteous. The Canoness is also good for a free command point. Then you can use any of the stratagems and you just need to remember to have paid your righteous miracle dice tax. The Canoness would want a Rod of Office so that you can reroll hit rolls of 1. This will go nicely with your Celestian Sacresants hitting on a 2+. The Hospitaller can finally get the unit to endure things. 5+ feel no pain right there. -1 to wound with their unit ability, and with a stratagem, -1 to hit. If you can spare the miracle dice, the Hospitaller can bring back D3+1 models. I think only 1 unit of Sacresants, 1 unit of 10? 10 Sacresants with a Hospitaller is nearly 20 Battle Sisters in points for the same base profile and the same objective control. They can be a good unit, but I prefer Battle Sisters, which also get a potential boost in this detachment. But Battle Sisters, even if you're punching really well to the Heart of Heresy, they're not the combat unit. They're not going to be able to charge, take an objective, and kill the enemy. The Celestian Sacresants can, and with higher objective control, they can be in combat and hold that objective. And I think Repentia would be quite happy in this detachment. Sustained hits and lethal hits without adding a Palatine to them, which you can only do in the Penitent Host. They're still an expensive unit. Arcoflagellants are an okay choice. This is a combat detachment. The stratagems are about using combat units, so any combat unit is going to be better. If you made an Arcoflagellant unit righteous, they move 8 inches, and with the Heart of Heresy, Strength 6, AP -1. Getting that AP is very important. That will get you through a tide of bodies. And at Strength 6, you're wounding Toughness 3 on a 2+. I'm not saying this is a terrible detachment, I'm not saying it's a good detachment, I'm saying that it could be better than the Penitent Host for the Penitent units, and that is not ideal. Well, let's do final thoughts. I don't think this detachment would work very well even before the Miracle Dice changes in the December balance patch. As soon as you add conditions to the detachment rule based around discarding Miracle Dice, you have a problem. Even with lots of Miracle Dice, you have to choose to have a detachment rule or an army rule. And if you discard low Miracle Dice, maybe because you're bad at rolling Miracle Dice, then you have to consider activating or not activating the Righteous Blows of the Palatine and the Sacred Healing of the Hospitaller. This detachment wants you to choose detachment rule over all other uses, as a big condition of the stratagems is being righteous. I applaud the idea, the theme, the concept of the detachment. An elite Celestian army for orders that like Celestians. The Ebon Chalice likes them. And we have more combat units without being penitent units. This is a Bloody Rose style detachment. It's what people wanted. In theme. If you like Paragon Warsuits, your Paragon Warsuits are very good. If there was a way of making the Paragon Warsuits better without adding Morwen Val, I think they've done it. And this was the time to do it. But Paragon Warsuits, Battle Sisters, and Celestian Sacresants are not always righteous, and I think they should be. I think they should be flat bonuses to those units. They should always be righteous, and you can make other units righteous with Miracle Dice to pull off Zephyrim attacks, or Repentia with extra strength and AP. The stratagems don't work very well without righteous. You will have to store up Miracle Dice to get a big turn 2 or turn 3 with 3 righteous units and stored up command points. That is very different to the speed and first strike power that the Bringers of Flame can or could bring. I will play it and see what it can do. Perhaps lots of Battle Sisters and combat units like the Zephyrim and Repentia is the way to go over Sacresants and more than 1 unit of Warsuits. There will be a way to get something out of this detachment. I may play it against new players so the balance of power is a bit more even. Don't lose hope and think that everything's terrible and only going to be fixed in 3 months by Games Workshop. They rarely change stratagems to improve detachments. Look at Genestealer Cult and their stratagems based on cult ambush markers as a mini-game. Still not changed more than 6 months after the cult ambush rule was first changed to no longer really need cult ambush markers. I know you'll let me know what you think in the comments. If you don't like this detachment, think of what the Army of Faith can do instead. It's the very obvious comparison. That is what this video is all about. My darlings and viewers, have a great day of 40k.